welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens, and this is Carly Stevens Books for all things writing, publishing, and indie author life. So let's talk character arcs. A character arc is basically just a character's change, just like a plot arc indicates the change that occurs from the beginning of a story to the end. A character arc is how the character starts one way and ends having changed in some way. So there are three basic ways to look at character arcs. There are positive arcs, which is the vast majority of stories, and that makes sense. We want to know that there is the ability to grow and change and become stronger and overcome trauma or lies or whatever it might be and end up better on the other side. There are flat arcs that we're going to talk about today, and then there are negative character arcs where that lie or negative trait is reinforced and the character ends up worse than they were before. This is an unusual way to go, but it is something that happens in some stories. Like we see this in Revenge of the Sith, for example, episode 3 of Star Wars with Anakin Skywalker. Now, I have not in the past thought too much about flat character arcs because to me, I consider them almost inferior to the other two. This was not a good thing on my part because flat arcs actually have some really important roles to play in certain types of stories. So a flat character arc is where the character doesn't really change much if at all, within the course of the story. So the ideas that came to my mind with flat character arcs are characters like James Bond or Indiana Jones, those action heroes where they change the world around them, but they themselves do not change. This is one very common way to write a flat character arc. You have a sort of hero who goes in and changes the world for the better. So there's this kind of aspirational aspect. Now, there's also the idea that flat character arcs can fit well with comfort stories as well. So you think about something like a cozy mystery. The main character might change over the course of the story, but there might also legitimately be a pretty flat character arc, and the character remains the same, but again changes the environment around them as the story goes on. But there's a level of comfort that comes from having a very predictable character, very predictable patterns in that cozy mystery series, let's say. In children's books and stories, this is common as well, for a character to remain the same throughout the course of the story, across the course of the series, because again, there's that level of comfort in predictability. So the things that have changed in my understanding of flat character arcs are those aspirational aspects. So I want to go back to that. I mentioned James Bond, I mentioned Indiana Jones. So I recently saw the new Superman movie, and in the past, Superman was not my favorite superhero just because he doesn't change or struggle in the same way that a character like Batman or even Wonder Woman at times does. Superman has it all figured out. He has all of the power, and that is very helpful for solving the world's problems, but to me it was not a very relatable sort of character. What I realized is that there's a type of flat character arc, a type of character that doesn't change in any great way over the course of their stories, that is better off for being that way because they represent this aspirational kind of character. So Superman, for example, embodies the idea that there can be a powerful being that has almost unlimited powers in his arsenal, but who uses those powers for good, for truth, for justice, for these very positive, kind, helpful, heroic things rather than struggling like so many other superheroes do. Now, I'm not going to say that this is necessarily better than the idea of having a positive character arc where people overcome difficulties to end up better on the other side. I don't think that there's a hierarchy necessarily. I think that both kinds of character arcs can serve their own individual purposes, and I didn't fully appreciate the value of the purpose that a character like Superman serves. So I need to give big credit to my friend C.H. Lynn for talking to me about this, because she and her family see Superman as this very inspirational figure, because so often in our world we see people in power who are misusing it, who are using it for injustice, who are using it for terrible purposes. We see many examples of that today. And so to see especially a male character with all these powers who is choosing to use those powers for good instead of for greed and these negative things, it is a hopeful kind of character to look up to and see. This also goes for people who have not had role models in their lives to look up to and aspire to be like. So after I had that conversation with my friend, I understood much better why people cared about Superman, who to me had never been very interesting. I hadn't seen the value of him as a character. He was just too perfect, and therefore why would I care, because he's not going to struggle and overcome anything. And to me, that's usually what draws me to a story, is seeing people fight to overcome these challenges or difficulties or whatever it might be. Superman just doesn't have that same level of challenge. So anyway, going back to that concept of flat character arcs, there is that sense of inspiration. There's also a sense of wish fulfillment. So this could go for characters like Superman, like Indiana Jones, like James Bond. We all know that that's somebody that many people have found to be a sort of aspirational character, even though he is pure fantasy. I recently saw an interview with V.E. Schwab, the author of Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, and she made such a fascinating point that it was the second reason, besides that conversation I had with C.H. Lynn, that I wanted to revisit this idea of flat character arcs. So you have the inspirational, the aspirational Superman, and then on the other side, V.E. Schwab talks about how you can get away with writing bad characters or misbehaving characters who really don't change a whole lot if you lean into that sense of wish fulfillment as well. So this is going to go on the negative side of things. Obviously, when you look up to a character like Superman using his powers for good, then we can understand that as an inspirational figure. But if you look at these other types of negative or morally gray or downright bad vigilante kinds of characters who go around just slaying all the people who have wronged them, and they don't learn a lesson by the end necessarily, there is a level of wish fulfillment in that as well, where we can live our dark daydreams vicariously through these characters that otherwise would be unlikable or even evil and don't necessarily need to change for us to enjoy reading stories about them. So, although I tend to present story and plot in the sense of two overlapping stories, the external plot and the internal plot, the external plot being the situation that changes and the internal plot being the character that changes from within as a result of the events of the plot, that is not the only way to write stories. And so I wanted to come on here, set the record straight that there is another couple different types of stories where the character themselves does not need to change for the story to serve a worthwhile purpose. So I've said on this channel several times, but my definition of what good writing is across genres, across time, across all of that, different styles, is when the form or the style supports and enhances the content for a worthwhile purpose. That worthwhile purpose might be the comfort of a character who does not change across a cozy mystery series. It might be the inspiration of a character that does not change and uses their powers for good. It might be the secret wish fulfillment of a bad character doing what you might think in your head that you wish you could do but never would. So those are my thoughts on flat character arcs. Flat character arcs do have their place in writing, even though my preference tends to lean pretty heavily into the positive character arc. I have written all three and they serve different purposes. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or additional thoughts on flat character arcs, or if you have any flat characters that you would like to highlight, put those down in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Make sure to subscribe if you're new, like this video if you like it, all those things. All right, have a good life, be of good cheer, bye.